Your hunger was growing. But you weren't going to just lie down like so many other toys, just waiting to be eaten by one of the big ones. Or worse, be taken by the prototype or its cult-like minions. Sure, it was frightening, but it made you feel like you had control over your situation. Using scavenged equipment you used to hunt, you went on the prowl. Of course, you were somewhat aware of the fact that the toys inside Playtime Co. were once human, but the fact that you were so deep within the facility's ruin made this your only option. Besides, most of them were feral anyways. On lucky days, you managed to hunt a stray animal, such as a rat, but most of the time toys needed to suffice. You had used a brick to pound a broken steel pipe into the shape of a makeshift spear. Used some PVC pipes, string, and bundle up copper wire to craft a bow. And your dresses made up of skinned ferals. You weren't a born survivalist. Most of this you learned out of sheer necessity, taught to yourself. As a toy, your body luckily didn't burn energy on its own, so technically just lying down and rotting was a somewhat viable strategy of survival, if just staying alive was your goal. But yours was thriving, and eventually getting out of here. And for that you needed to stay awake and aware. There was a reason as to why you wanted out. And was the fact that you looked mostly human. You were a Spiz doll, part of the Fancy Lads series of dolls. The Fancy Lads toy line was a series of cowboy-themed dolls for girls and boys alike. The Spiz doll was designed after one of its designer's ancestors who had married a factory owner, making the Spiz doll the equivalent of a rich noble woman. With beautiful rosy white silicone skin, blonde plastic hair, and blue glass eyes. The toys sold relatively well. They never were in the top 10 of Playtime Co.'s toys. But they were surprisingly famous among female collectors who loved purchasing additional dresses for the dolls and displaying them. You apparently were one of them. At least that's what you thought. You didn't remember your human name or your life as a human. You did discover a file, however, containing information about a volunteer for the Bigger Bodies Initiative, who according to the document was the best fit. Lonely, no living family, collector of Fancy Lads dolls, and obviously willing to turn herself into a Spiz doll. Over your time at Playtime Co., you had lost a lot. Before the chaos broke out, you and the other Fancy Lads had been deposited in cold storage until your reveal, a sort of semi-conscious state of stasis. You had been freed by the prototype, and only you and 3 others managed to flee from it. But that was long ago, and now it was just you. An encounter with Mommy Longlegs and that cat and many other monsters left your body in bad shape. There were multiple holes in your plastic skin, revealing sickly red, sinewy flesh beneath that was always in danger of getting infected, and offered easy places to genuinely cause you damage. So your arms and legs were covered in bloody bandages. Your severely damaged head was held together using duct tape and hope. And a crack ran through your left eye, giving you double vision on it. So just to be less disorientated, you used an eye patch to cover it up. Not wanting to cut your hair, since it was made of plastic it would never regrow, you wore it in a ponytail. Over time, and with the lack of showers, blood, and gore, it had gotten dull and dirty. Currently, you were in the process of making makeshift arrows, using some hot glue, plastic coat hangers, and pencils. It wasn't perfect, but functional. Just damaging enough to slow down prey. On the top of your list of things to hunt were the smiling critters. There were many of them, and as horrifying as they tasted like pork. And even though they were quick and dangerous, as long as you didn't inhale their gases, they were relatively simple to hunt down for their size. Some of them even ran if you got the first hit with your bow. A sudden loud noise made you hyper-aware of your surroundings. Silently you shuffled under a nearby desk. You were in an office section inside the lower half of the factory. An assembly line was barely visible through large glass windows. The floor was grimy, covered in dried blood. After a few seconds of agonizing silence, you narrowed your eyes, slowly taking a step out of your hiding spot, bow drawn, ready to fire. Light in the office was sparsely supplied by flickering lights. If it wasn't for the floating dust particles, you may even have called this acceptable visibility. And then you saw it. A dirty red thing crawling on all fours like a ghoul or a zombie. It was a Bobby Bear Hug. She had creepily long arms, and her legs too. She didn't have feet. Instead, she had another pair of hands. Her beady white eyes were locked onto you, as red mist left through her mouth. The scent of roses soon entered your nostrils. Immediately you ditched your ranged weapon for the spear. After all, you needed one hand to not breathe. Clasping your nose shut. Bigger bodies catnaps were the true terrors of the critters, and an immediate reason to vacate any area you were in. But a Bobby Bear Hug or a Hoppy Hopscotch, those were easy pickings, as their smells didn't make them stronger. Smiling critters all had scented gas coming out of their mouths, and through whatever cursed technology and chemicals, their effects were turned up to 11. For instance, Hoppy's gas smelled like peppermint. If inhaled, it gave a cooling sensation and stimulated nerves to inhibit pain. So fighting one was more a matter of disabling movement by breaking bones. While Bobby's smelled like roses. It was soothing, relaxing to the body. But it also released endorphins, a lot of them, effectively making it an aphrodisiac. Bobby tilted her head, seeing your refusal of her gaseous gift as an outright insult. She screeched before rushing forward, using her agile body to climb up on the row of desks. She wasn't as mobile as Mommy Longlegs, but she was feral, and therefore had no regards for anything. Not to mention the rose gas made her feel less pain and feel less anxiety. So that's what you used to your advantage. She'd be too aggressive to strategize. Quickly, you shouldered your bow and rushed into the opposite direction of where Bobby was coming from. You declared this office section as your personal hunting ground, and there were some hidden traps lying about, going from spike strips made from sharpened pencils to caltrops made using nails and molding clay. Suddenly, a desktop screen zoomed past your head, shattering on the ground only a few feet next to you as you ran past it. Damn it. Bobby was using everything at her disposal. Even throwing stuff. Throwing stuff was your thing. Angrily, you dove under a higher-hanging tripwire. Holding your right foot up to activate it, once more of your body was out of the trap's grasp. A thick, heavy blanket fell onto Bobby's face, disorienting her. Diving face first into a desk. As she fumbled to get up again, you stepped next to her, spear raised, stabbing her right into her hip. She squealed, sounding like a panicked pig. Relentlessly, you burrowed the spear into the creature, over and over, spraying blood in your face and your clothes. Bobby grabbed your ankle, pulling you, and you too fell on the ground. With the strength of someone who wasn't ready to die just yet, you jumped forward as the monster unleashed another wave of rose gas. Your hands digging into the open wounds on her chest, trying to deal as much internal damage as possible. You'd rip her heart out if you could. Your eyes teared up from the poisoned air. You tore, dug, and bit for every bit of bloody bear meat you could get between your wet fingers and teeth. The Pharaoh knew her life was going to end soon. And as hard as you fought, there was no way you'd let up. You invested too much energy running, and you had been starving before. Finally, Bobby Bearhug made her last twitch of life, unleashing a large explosion of rose-scented gas from her mouth into the office, covering it in a thick red mist. You were heaving. Your body was feeling hot all over, and you tried to inhale as little through your nose as possible. And yet, salvia was flowing out of your mouth. Not because of the delicious-smelling meat hanging over a makeshift fire. As expected, Bobby tasted like pork, once the thick, artificial fur was removed. There wasn't much time to properly prepare the meat. You just burned it until it stopped looking raw. Luckily, the gas wasn't flammable, and the fire created a little cone around you that shielded you from the brunt of it. And yet still you could feel it in your loins. But you weren't the only one feeling the result of the gas attack. A lowly Huggy Wuggy had been lying flat in the ventilation system of the office. He was weak, starved, and had just fallen asleep out of sheer exhaustion. But the smell of cooked meat and the rose gas had awoken him out of his hibernation. A smell so delicious and lewd, it would awaken any toy with the capability of reproduction. Silently he crawled towards the quiet crackle of flame, and he finally saw the orange glow, the fire that you had made. Through the iron bars of the vent, he watched you, kneeling before the fire, charred meat in your hands as you tore it off bone. Your body twitching unintentionally as you experienced too many sensations at once. Hungrily, salvia dropped from Huggy's mouth as his plush hand pushed against the loose grate. But the rusty screw broke, and with a loud shatter it landed on the ground. You jumped up into a crouched position, pointing the spear in the direction of the noise. And as greasy fat, blood and salvia ran down your chin, you bared your teeth threateningly, growling, while the blue monster built itself up to its maximum size. Its mouth open, teeth glistening in the orange light of the fire. Quickly you jolted forward, barking and hissing as you poked your spear. Huggy returned the gesture in kind by leaning just a little away. You could hear his loud, heaving breaths, but you would protect your food. Slowly you blinked. Your heart was pounding, and nervously you breathed heavily, trying to figure out the monster's next move. Though in your mutual caution of one another, neither of you realized that you were inhaling massive amounts of the red gas. Your knees were beginning to shake. You were feeling dizzy. With his right hand, Huggy reached forward. You weakly poked at it, but quickly, like a snail, it retreated, having stolen a handful of the tender, bloody meat. You watched as the monster proudly and loudly swallowed it in one go. It was then, feeling the rejuvenation from the flesh, that Huggy lost his mind. He placed his hands on the ground, crouching down like a cat ready to pounce. Huggy growled quietly, and you exhaled through your mouth. There was a moment of silence between the two of you. The hunter and the apex predator, silently staring at each other, as the aphrodisiac in the air did its thing, clouding both your minds more and more. You should have left the fog as quickly as possible, but it had already ruined your thought process, prioritizing your hunger over safety. The few thoughts you still managed, that weren't filled with both lewd and violent fantasies, were memory, a tape you had seen that demonstrated the worst-case scenarios when it came to the critters and their gas, and why it was important to use gas masks around them. The reason you only went after a few of them. And the result of Bobby's gas was bloody fascinating. One of your hands slowly slipped off the spear, slowly sliding up from your thigh to your chest, cautiously, to see how Huggy would react. Two of your fingers taking hold of one of the ribbons that held your makeshift clothes together, pulling at it, making it go loose, revealing just a bit more of your damaged skin to Huggy. The monster didn't seem to react at first, and so you narrowed your eyes. And it was this moment of hesitation that he had waited for. He pounced. Your hand was still busy, the spear just barely missing him, just pointing up between his left armpit. He was so big, so strong, and heaving dead air into your face, his hungry spittle dripping onto you. But he didn't jump down. Yet, seemed as this was the fated outcome for this. Huggy tore at your clothes without much thought behind it. What the two of you were going to do didn't require them. Meanwhile, you grabbed at his tangled, musky fur, combing through it, pulling at it, feeling his hot, warm body. The monster growled as you pinched it. The pain you were giving him felt pleasurable, while his large, sticky, wet tongue rubbed over your face. The taste of your salty skin, combined with the grease and blood from your hunt, made the creature's eyes widen joyfully. It wasn't long until you pushed yourself against him, your hands gripping the sides of his massive head for purchase as you hungrily rubbed your face against his cheeks, licking his lips, kissing his tongue and teeth, biting into his pelt. Your naked body was twitching and rubbing. You wanted to feel as much of him as you could, feel his size, be taken by him. Turned into an even bigger, blabbering, grunting mess as you already were, wet from the various liquids already exchanged between the two of you. Aggressively, he grabbed you by your ponytail, pulling you, making you gasp in pleasure and pain before he carelessly threw you on your chest, his hands grabbing your ass, pulling it closer to him. You could feel his teeth scrape against the back of your head before finally he jumped down on your shoulder, your delicious blood spewing from your wound into his mouth. You screamed in pain, but he wasn't tearing. He wasn't chewing. He just wanted the taste of your blood on his tongue before he tasted the rest of your eager, willing body.
Thank you to the people who are supporting me on Ko-fi. You guys are keeping me alive.
Special thanks to the channel members Melofia, Miss Hayfield, Muffin, Nico Barlow, Hella, Nexerist, AJ Anime Girl 85, and Hopeful. Your support is very greatly appreciated.